Hey guys, Karusufi here with a double review. This time I'll be reviewing the RKF Kamen Rider Kenzan, Sarutobi Ninjaden, and Sarutobi Budasan form change set, and the RKF Kamen Rider Slash, Hanselnuts Gretel, and Hansel Bremen form change set from Kamen Rider Saber. These are the Rider Kicks figures of our 5th and 6th of our main riders, who each come with various weapons and interchangeable parts. So, let's get started. First up, we have Kamen Rider Kenzan, Sarutobi Ninjaden. Now, before I look at the figure, I'm actually going to explain his name, which I forgot to do in my review of the Fuusouken Hayate. So, Kenzan's name is a little bit more clever than some of the other riders. Taking at face value, the kanji used for his name mean sword slash, so it fits into the sword naming. But the word Kenzan also has different context that fits in with his ninja theming, since Kenzan is a word often used by ninjas in media as a way of saying that they're arriving or they're appearing. So in that way, his name has a double meaning. So, starting off with head, has a bit more of a unique design than some of the other riders. As in, he has no horn sword like some of the others, but instead, he has the two swords for the Nitou mode of the Fuusouken Hayate sticking out of this side. Then he has his visor, which is in the shape of a shuriken. It's got a pretty cool design where it has this kind of gold speckling on it to give it a bit of color. Then of course you also have the different colors of the two swords. Going down to the body, it's definitely the most sleek, streamlined, and simple of the rider suits we've seen thus far. We've got mainly this green color with bits of kind of yellow splashed in at different points. Very smooth and sleek designs for the armor on the arms and legs, as well as having this little twin-tailed scarf on the back. And of course, for his belt, since he uses the Fuusouken Hayate to transform, he has the sort of logos buckle. Articulation-wise, it's standard for the RKF, so it's got ball joint head, ab crunch, ball joint at the shoulder, and go in and out to that far, bicep swivel, single jointed elbows, wrist swivel, the scarf is on its own ball joint. Let's go forward and back, in and out. Have a thigh swivel, single joint knees, and ball joint ankles. So next for his accessories, first up we have the Fuusouken Hayate. Now with this, what's cool about it is that this actually can change modes without having to have different individual pieces for the different modes. So obviously first off, it starts out in Itori mode. So you can see that it has the two swords sandwiched together like this. It does have a lot of detail to it, even down to the open book. Now for this, you can see that it's a little bit big for his hands, so in order to hold onto it in this mode, he basically can only hold on to one half of the sword. However, we can then take this and split it up. So you have the two swords of Nitou mode. So, you can see that each one has its own details, even down to how they connect, which is all quite impressive. So, then you can take one and put them in each hand. And they feel a lot better. But then, we can take the two and rejoin them across in the middle. So now we have Shuriken mode. And of course, since it uses one of the handles of the two swords, he can hold it pretty well. In addition to that, he has a pair of interchangeable hands. One being this kind of open splayed finger hand, and then the other being the typical ride book holding hand. And of course for those, simply pop out the old hand and switch in the new one. And the final accessory is the Kobuta-san Kyodai arm. Now for this, obviously we need to change it out. And the way it's done is the same way as with the Genbu Jakun set, or when that form we looked at the Buster set. So all I have to do is remove the forearm and remove the hand and then switch them in. But since that is a little bit tough to do, I'll be doing that off screen. So I'm going to make a quick transition here. And here we have Kamen Rider Kenzan Sarutobi Buta-san. So for this, we now switch it in with the Buta-san arm, which gives him a shield in the shape of a brick house. Now this is pretty simple in what it does, and almost too simple as it does lose out on what else this form can do. Because if we look at the henshin page of the Kobuta-san Kyodai Wonder Ride book, you can see that has the brick house here, but then it also has the stick house and the straw house. So basically in the show, it starts out as the straw house, and it kind of burns through the different layers until it gets to the brick house. But in this case, it's just the final version of this arm. Still, the color does match up with Kenzan, so it does look pretty good. Next, we move on to Kamen Rider / Hanselnuts to Gretel. So, starting with the helmet, for his visor, instead of having any kind of slashing motion, instead he has a burst of sound. You can see with the kind of zigzags and the very spiky kind of shape to it. And for his horn, it is the Onjuuken Suzune, however it's in gun mode rather than sword mode. And like I described in my review of the Onjuuken Suzune, his armor design is based on the candy house from Hansel and Gretel. So he's got all these black parts, or rather all these brown parts that are meant to look like chocolate or perhaps graham crackers. A detail that I didn't notice until this review is that if you look at his belly, you can see actually the doors to the house right there. On his collar we have these 3 different pieces of candy. For For the shoulder pads, they're in the shape of cookies. And for the cuffs on his ankles and knees, or rather wrists and ankles, they're supposed to be in the shape of donuts. And of course, because he uses his sword only to transform, he has the Sword of Logos buckle. So, he's got the standard articulation with the neck, shoulders, shoulder pads are on their own joints, bicep, elbow, wrist, ab crunch, legs, thigh swivel, knee joints, and ankle joints. And mine, I don't know if it's the same with all of them, but at least for mine, his ankles are a little bit weak, so he has a tendency to fall over. Next we move on to the accessories. So, first up we have the Onjuuken Suzune in both sword and gun modes. So, for both of them, they're done in the same magenta color as his body, with this nice metallic blue paint. Like all the weapons, it's got a lot of nice fine details molded in, even down to the Wonder language that's written on the sword itself. And of course we have the Open Wonder Ride book. And then for the gun mode, you can see that there's a little bit of size conversion where it's not quite as long as the sword mode, but it does have the changed shape as well as the splayed open blade. Even with what was the sticker inside the toy, now molded in, so we can get that detail too. And of course he just grips them with the hands that he has by default. Just need to get in there like that. And there we go. Also has a pair of interchangeable hands, which are the same standard pair. So it's got the splayed open finger hand, as well as the ride book holding hand. And once again, switching out is nice and simple. As long as the joints cooperate. There we go. Like with Kenzan, he has a form change arm for the Bremen no Rock Band book. And this case actually has both a forearm and a shoulder pad. So obviously for the shooting out the arm it's going to be the same, but for the shoulder pad it comes off on this joint, then pops on this one. But once again, I'll be doing that off camera. And here we have Kamen Rider / Hansel Bremen. Now for this one we have the Bremen arm with the speaker shoulder pad, as well as the different animals coming out with their instruments along the arm. And for this one, unfortunately, it really could have used some paint. As you can see, it really is just done using the brown and magenta colors, even though, as you can see by the inside of the book, the real thing is a lot more colorful. Still, it does have the right amount of details, but certainly it would have been nice if they could have used perhaps some of the paint colors they used here on the candy bits for the arm itself. And for this one, we can give him the Onjuuken Suzune in gun mode, since he uses this more in this mode than in the other one. rather in this form. Just like that. And, as you might imagine, because they use the same method of popping off and popping back on, you can actually interchange the arms between Kamen Rider's Buster, Kenzan, and Slash. So, let's do just that. And so, here we have Kamen Rider Buster, Genbu Bremen, Kamen Rider Kenzan, Sarutobi Jakkun, and Kamen Rider Slash, Hansel Butasan. For each of them, they can use any of the three arms, and could even technically use their original arms. And thanks to the shared joint system, all of their hands work too. Though it should be noted that only Slash and Buster can use the shoulder pad here for the Bremen arm, since they have the actual separate shoulder pads, whereas for Kenzan, since his shoulder pad is merged with the shoulder itself, he could only use the forearm. But this does give some playability between the three of them. And there we go. Overall, for these two figures, I have a lot of the same points to make about them as with the Kamen Rider Buster RKF. In that, of course, like all figures in this line, they have good paint, articulation, details, and accessories, but in the case of these three, they have the added bonus of having these interchangeable form change parts. And I like that because it kind of is like Bundan is trying to work back in the kind of gimmicks into the RKF series, where they did try to do that initially with GO and then kind of reeled back on that with 01. It looks like they're trying to get back to that a little bit here in Saber. And it is nice because, as far as I'm concerned, the form changing here is very much non-intrusive, since you're changing out the parts instead of putting anything on top of anything else. It doesn't detract from the articulation and posability you can get out of these figures. And if you have two or more of these, you can actually use the different parts between the different figures, so there's that interchangeability aspect. So if you're a fan of these riders and you're a fan of this whole form changing gimmick, I can definitely recommend picking up this set. Next time I'll be reviewing the Sayu Journey Wonder Ride book. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and if you're new and would like some more, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. And for now, this is KRX50, riding off.